Oh my, oh my, oh my, the day has finally come. It's reveal day, June 25th of the year 2021. And so far, my perusing on the old YouTube has turned up nothing in the way of revelations. Hi, this is the JoJo and Joe show here at the Two Joes podcasting studio. I'd like to welcome my lovely co-host JoJo to the show.
How's it going this morning, everyone? I tell you what, you didn't say what they were supposed to reveal. Something about UFOs, right?
UFOs. Did I not mention UFOs at all? I just assume everyone's in on...
Where's our UFO sound?
Oh, UFO sound's right over here. Oh, and then that didn't work. I'm sorry about that.
So, nothing. And, you know... Maybe it's going to happen later on today.
Exactly.
Who knows?
I mean, maybe the Pentagon said, we don't have time for this nonsense. Or maybe...
Well, they're too busy doing other nonsense.
Or maybe they've got to read it to Congress first. Maybe it gets delivered to Congress today, and then Congress peruses it, and then maybe at the Congress's will and whim, we get to see it later. I don't know how that's going to work.
Yep. Well, in the meantime, we have an interesting phenomenon related to UFOs.
Yes, we're finally going to get to USOs today, underwater submersible objects. And we're going to go back to the Basement Office YouTube series by the New York Post, episode 8. We're going to review, discuss, debate, see if it supports any of the evidence they put out, supports any of our theories as to what these things are.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
A strange recurring theme in the UFO phenomenon is water. It's been reported that 1 in 5 UFO sightings involve unidentified craft being seen above or under bodies of water.
What was that footage from? We haven't seen that footage yet.
Well, and it's hard to tell if it's footage that they made to illustrate a point or if it's an actual video from somebody.
They made that look like it was an actual video from somebody, didn't they?
I don't know. It's hard for me to tell the difference.
They don't tell you this is a dramatization or not. Yeah. Or this has been proved to be weather balloons.
It does, though. In the corner it says recreation.
Well, and this one's obvious to me that it's a recreation. The other one, it wasn't so obvious.
The one where they're hovering above the water?
Yeah. They never talked about that sighting. That looks like a pretty good sighting to me.
Yeah. Well, maybe they will.
I guess they can't do them all. I mean, that would take forever because there's been thousands and thousands of sightings over the years, right?
Yes.
Back to the show.
Yeah, a lot of these UFOs have been captured on video, some of them over water.
What is that?
And because of that, the U.S. Navy, with ships sailing in oceans across the entire world, has become a major source of UFO sightings, with hundreds of reported cases. Today, we're diving deep into murky waters and discussing when a UFO becomes a USO. Unidentified submerged object. Welcome to the Basement Office.
All right, so I'm hoping we'll see some evidence to back up your organic UFO theory on this one.
That they are grown rather than manufactured.
Everyone knows the term UFO, unidentified flying object, craft in the sky. USO, unidentified submerged object, is essentially these craft being observed either coming out of the water, into the water, or traveling through the water. Water seems to play a big role in the common thread of sightings, correct?
Absolutely. Water does seem to be critical, and it's interesting that of course, traditionally, we thought that the Air Force had the lead for this subject, and only recently, perhaps, with the ATIP program and the Nimitz encounters, are we learning that the Navy is a big player in all of this, and again, it brings us back to water.
Right. And if you remember, the original story that kicked off all of this modern disclosure, in the Nimitz story, the pilots describe seeing UFOs, these, 45-foot Tic Tacs flying through the air, but they also saw a USO, the size of a 737 underneath the surface of the water, creating a disturbance on the surface And one of the UFOs, these little Tic Tacs, was hovering above the USO. One of the new anecdotes to come out of all this recently was David Fravor, Commander David Fravor, who was one of the witnesses of the Tic Tac, was on the Joe Rogan show. David Fravor tells a story of earlier, pre-Tic Tac days, earlier in his career, a naval ship going to retrieve a disabled torpedo water drone type thing. And as they were approaching this disabled object in the water to retrieve it, as he described it, a dark disc-shaped object emerged from the depths of the ocean.
Because it's not a submarine. You've seen submarines before. Once you see a submarine, you can't confuse it with something else. And he starts screaming through the intercom system to tell him to pull the diver up. And the diver's like a few feet from the water. And all of a sudden, he said the torpedo just got sucked down underwater, and the object just descended back down into the depths. And they never recovered the torpedo.
Jesus. Okay, can we pause it here? Okay, so just summarize that for me, what happened there, right? So they're trying to get this torpedo.
Right.
And there's divers in the water.
Yep.
And so the divers in the water see
a dark disc
shape. And then what happens?
Then your phone rings.
Do we need to rewind it?
Let's rewind it just because. What the heck?
Type thing.
Right.
And
Here we go.
as they were approaching this disabled object in the water to retrieve it, as he described it, a dark disc-shaped object emerged from the depths of the ocean.
Because it's not a submarine. You've seen submarines before. Once you see a submarine, you can't confuse it with something else. And he starts screaming through the intercom system to tell him to pull the diver up. And the diver's like a few feet from the water. And all of a sudden, he said the torpedo just got sucked down underwater, and the object just descended back down into the depths. And they never recovered the torpedo.
Jesus. And
okay, now let's pause.
Okay, so it got sucked down.
So the first thing I want to point out is, if any of you are actually watching the show, The Basement Office, the first picture they show of the Navy guy who's being interviewed, who's saying, admitting, okay, here's what happened. There's another guy in the picture with him, and his face is all blotted out. It's like blurry, so you can't see. Yep. So I just want to point out that even now, still, there is a significant stigma in our society to admitting to have seen something that one cannot identify, which I think is ridiculous. And I'm really hoping that this big reveal that may or may not happen will help move us into a place where seeing something that we can't explain is not against the rules of our society. So that's the first thing that came up for me with this.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
And then the second thing is, it's again, which we've seen this before, is another example of these ships disabling weapons that could hurt the Earth, could hurt, So in other words, they sucked up the torpedo and the dang thing was gone.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a ship that had nuclear stuff? And this was like a lot of episodes ago, and it wasn't a submersible, but it was a UFO that came and just disabled all of their nuclear stuff. Do you recall that?
No, that was it's another story which I don't think these guys have mentioned yet, but it has to do with a missile silo in Montana.
Ah, okay. Can you summarize that for us?
Well, it's just that UFO hovered over the top of this missile base and shut everything down. They couldn't launch the missiles if they would have wanted to. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. So this isn't the first time that they've disabled human
or shown some interest. Yeah. So do you think this adds at all to your theory of organic objects, submersible objects? I mean, do you think this could have been one of those? It just swallowed up the torpedo, ate it, or
well. So you're talking about my theory that
I'm looking for some
of
support.
these ships are grown organically.
Yeah, possibly.
That's the direction their societies have gone.
I wonder.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it would make a difference if something could go underwater if it was organic or if it was dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we have
see, in my
submarines
mind-
that are dead that go underwater.
In my mind, I'm automatically thinking, it's better chance of it being an organic being if it's in water for some reason.
Well, you know what? And I think there is some truth to that because the magic, the thing that is so unique about this planet is the water. You know, the water is life. It is.
Yeah, it truly is.
And so it's not surprising that the vehicles or the life forms that are visiting us can go in water too. I mean, our planet is what? Mostly water, isn't it? Percentage-wise. So I don't know. It's interesting what happened to that missile.
Yeah, very interesting story. I don't remember. I watched that episode with the Commander Fravor on Joe Rogan. I don't remember that story being told for whatever reason. But let's see if they got any more evidence on USOs, what they act like, how they behave. See if we come up with any more clues.
Well, and I wonder if they wouldn't have lifted that diver out of the water. Perhaps the diver would have been taken as well and had an experience and released later.
Perhaps.
Heard that story, a lot of puzzle pieces started possibly connecting. I looked back and started noticing that, yes, many UFO sightings occur near bodies of water. And one of those puzzle pieces comes from season 1, when you and I were discussing these flying saucer photos taken by the Brazilian Navy over the ocean. In 1958, the military of Brazil takes these photos of a saucer in the sky.
Yes, this is a Navy training ship and multiple witnesses and these extraordinary photos. And it's also interesting that over the years there have been a number of reports of UFOs emerging from and flying back into the ocean. Just as you think you're beginning to get a handle on this phenomenon, there's a new aspect to it.
It could be coming from the ocean?
Well, that's one of a number of theories about this.
Okay, so before we move on to well-documented modern cases of USOs, I think it's important to look back in history, human history, and realize there's a lot of stories and folklore regarding weird stuff coming out of the water.
Absolutely. And people say, well, in folklore, in religion, the gods always come from the skies. Not true. Plenty of gods come from the water. There's Poseidon, there's Enki, the god of the Anunnaki is the water god. The birth of Venus, she comes out of the ocean.
Right. And another thing, in doing research for this episode, looking back through history, something that I learned that I had no idea was real, and it turns out it is in 1492, on board the Santa Maria, Christopher Columbus, en route to discover America, writes in his logbook describing a luminous hovering object above the ocean, observed by those of his crew. Have you heard of this?
Yes, it's an interesting piece of American history that I guess a lot of people haven't heard of, but there it is. As you say, it's in the ship's log. It's on the record.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly dismissed because scientists have written it off in many ways with natural explanations for what he saw. A meteor,
Weather balloon,
a star, brightly, a star that
in
he didn't know.
1492.
But the way he describes it in his logbook is of a candle, a lit candle, hovering above the ocean. And that's weird. And then there's an event from Japanese history, folklore, a tall tale, you could say, that does actually have some documented history behind it. It's from the turn of the 19th century, 1803 in Japan. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, this is truly bizarre. I mean, it's really surreal.
Yeah, it's so crazy. The legend is called Utsuru Boon, and it translates to roughly hollow ship, hollow boat. And the story goes that in 1803, this object right here washed ashore on the coast of Japan. Local fishermen see it, they approach it, and a figure emerges.
Yes, a female who spoke a language that the local people couldn't understand, who carried with her and refused to be parted from a strange box, a device of some sort. No one knew who she was, where she came from, what this object was that she had arrived in.
So, a history museum in Japan has released to the public an exhibit, a book or manuscript from the 1830s that writes about this event. You can see here the story is told. There are artistic interpretations of what the fishermen claim to have seen, the craft. Here is the figure, the woman that they said they saw, and she's clutching this box. And the story goes that after she was acting weird and she wouldn't let go of the box, the fishermen led her back to the craft, put her inside, and out to sea she went. The whole story is so weird, Nick.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the weird drawings, the weird sketches, the weird story, all notwithstanding, I should reiterate that this is regarded as nothing more than folklore. Further investigations have been done by modern historians into this case, and while they haven't been able to prove that nothing like this happened in 1803 Japan, there is no evidence to support that this is anything beyond folklore.
But I mean, I think there's a wider issue there. You look at something like this and you say, well, it's just folklore. But what is folklore? I mean, in a sense, it is information passed between people. We do our...
Yeah, I completely agree with him.
So, what do you think of these interesting historic observations?
I think they're just as valid as the observations that are happening today.
You know, at some point, all these sightings and all these observations going way, way back in history, the multitude of them has to lend some credence to we've been visited for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I completely believe that. I agree with that. I know that you're still kind of on the fence. But, you know, they did bring up something, another point, which I want to talk about, is that these are not aliens. They're not from a different planet. They're actually perhaps from inside the ocean. That it's some kind of a species that lives in the ocean that makes these crafts. That, you know, that's one of the theories that they have introduced. And, you know, I just want to say, you know, on that note, it is entirely possible that there is life in the ocean that we are not aware of. You know, the whales and the dolphins, the intelligence of some of these animals surpasses humans. So there's a very good chance that they are further along in the quest to save this planet than we are currently on a human quest to destroy the planet. And why wouldn't we get help from elsewhere? You know, this Earth is really cool. And I think that some of the crafts that are being encountered are from other planets and are here to aid us. And others are here to just check us out, and they might not be quite as friendly.
And others come from Atlantis?
Well, okay,
Grown
so
by...
what...
Come by whales and dolphins who are more intelligent than us and are further along in saving the planet than we are.
Yeah, so perhaps some of the crafts are, you know, remote things from the whales.
Yeah.
You know, the whales are like, hey, let's do this or do that. I don't know. I think it's a very interesting theory.
That's a good theory.
There's no reason that one theory is the only explanation.
Could be multiple theories.
I believe that the more explanations that we can come up with, the better off we're going to be. If we can open this thing up in our society, then we can maybe really actually start to interact. You know, that's what I would love.
Cool.
There's a little more interaction between humans and whatever the new thing is. Yeah. Whatever it is we don't understand, let's let go of our fear and let's, you know, be smart about it. But let's start to interact. Let's stop making it a stigma that you can't talk about.
Yeah, well, I think maybe that's what's happening now. Yeah.
Today, maybe.
ourselves a disservice if we just dismiss it as tales that we're told.
Okay, so there was a little bit of weird history regarding weird stuff coming in and out of the ocean, but now we're going to dive into well-documented modern cases of USOs. 1973, Piedmont, Missouri. First sighting comes from a basketball coach and some of the players at night. They see a UFO, a diamond kind of spin-top shaped UFO. It gets weird when dozens and dozens of people begin to see the object hovering above Clearwater Lake, which was the big lake near Piedmont, or coming literally out of Piedmont Lake. A couple pictures were taken. This is the glow. It started with a glow above the horizon to the east, and witnesses saw within Clearwater Lake a glow, reddish light in the lake, and then an object would emerge from the lake, out of the lake, and become some people saw an orb, or as you see in this photo, which was printed in dozens of newspapers, this object, a kind of spin-top diamond, maybe even triangle-shaped UFO. And all of this takes place near Clearwater Lake.
There are some great quotes, by the way, in this case. There's a local police chief says there's no doubt that there's something up there. We just don't know what it is. And one of the first witnesses basically said, I know this is going to sound funny, but there's hardly anyone around here who hasn't seen it.
I can dismiss one person saying, I saw this thing coming out of the lake, this big object that didn't make a sound, it took off its speed. But when dozens and dozens of people from all areas of a town, a city, a state begin seeing and describing the same thing, you've got to sit back. You have to sit back and go, wait a second. What are they looking at? You know, what are they seeing? Something's there. So, a well-documented case.
So, you know, and it said approximately 500 people admitted to seeing this.
Mm-hmm. In 1973, before there were people out there flying drones.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think that's really cool that there wasn't that stigma in that moment, you know, for that town. Or maybe there was. Yeah. Maybe there was a backlash afterwards.
Well, maybe so. I mean, even that Navy pilot that saw the UFO, when he got back on the ship, he started getting teased about it, you know. They started playing alien movies like Independence Day and other movies like that on the ship's movie channel, you know.
Well, and, you know, even though it's kind of like a twisted way for our society to move into reality and admit that there's things that we see that we don't understand, it's hard to get there.
Well, yeah,
and so
we
this
use
kind
humor
of teasing, this kind of humor
it, yeah.
is good. It's in the right direction, even though it's a little bit off.
Yeah.
You know, so I applaud the people that are willing to admit, hey, I saw this and I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
You know, that takes guts still in our society, and the more people that can just do it, the better.
Yeah, I mean, even at the bottom of some of these comment threads on some of these YouTube videos that I watch, you'll see that, oh, I saw that too, or I saw something just like that. You know, these are all these unreported UFO sightings that no one ever hears about, and there they are in the comment section. It's really quite amazing.
Yep, I agree.
With a ton of witnesses, sketches, Air Force involvement, takes place in 1965, starting over Oklahoma. A wave of saucers, flying saucers, is seen by hundreds over 4 states. And on the first day, it was actually at night, July 31st, 1965, it all starts with a USO. A fisherman at night in his boat on a lake. He observes a saucer-type object with a greenish-white light slowly emerge in front of him out of the lake and then zip off at speed. He was so shocked by this that it's reported he was hospitalized for shock. It really just literally blew his mind. And it was determined he was not on drugs, not drunk, and was an upstanding citizen. And then you have 4 or 5 straight days of multiple sightings of multiple saucers spreading over Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and the like. And you can see here the headlines of how the news of the day was covering it. Thousands more see flying saucers over Oklahoma City. Here's a sketch by a witness. And
I mean, that's pretty detailed. There's not much middle ground with something like that.
Yes, this is would be the object that a fisherman claims came out of a lake and then took off into the skies and was then seen in the skies by locals over 4 states. Now, the interesting thing is the Air Force gets involved. And what do we know now in 1965? What was the Air Force doing at this point?
Well, of course, we had Project Blue Book. So they were officially investigating these sightings. The Air Force was coming out, interviewing the witnesses, and very often, sad to say, what they were trying to do with these waves of sighting is debunk them.
Right, yeah. They would try to downplay people's fears, downplay, oh, you didn't see this, what you actually saw was this. And observers, witnesses were actually starting to argue with the Air Force because the Air Force was reporting, no, as it says here, no, you were just seeing a star or Jupiter.
Oh, let's pause it here.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
All right.
Come on. Another weather balloon explanation.
There you have it. And what it's all about? It's all about using fear to control the masses. Mm-hmm. And telling them, oh, you didn't see this, so you don't need to be afraid, and we'll take care of you, and you can just go about your life and ignore everything, and there's nothing to be afraid of because it doesn't exist. All of your fears, and this is the government telling us, oh yeah, all of your fears don't exist. Like the middle class is now gone. Oh, but don't worry, all of your fears don't exist.
Yeah.
It's interesting how it's playing out to try and keep reality the way they want it. And by they, I mean the people that are controlling everything. The ones right now, because we live
power,
in a monetary system.
The ones that have the money.
So it's the ones that have the money.
The influence.
Yeah, that are deciding still, hey, we're not going to open it up to that because we can't control it. Because we don't understand it either. So we're going to deny that it exists.
Until we understand it ourselves.
And we're going to tell, you, the people, the multiple people that keep seeing these things, that that's not what they're seeing. Yeah. And so they don't need to be afraid. And who's not going to buy that? Versus, yeah, we have no clue what this is and it could blow up the world. Let's get our fears
we're on
going.
it. We're investigating. We're taking it seriously. How come they never say that part?
Well, because they know they don't understand it. And they know they can't control it. And so they're just going to deny that it exists. It's the perfect play.
I guess.
And it's our job to realize what's going on and just not buy into it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little fear when there's something that I don't understand. It's a lizard brain type of reaction, you go into that fear, just like that guy was hospitalized because of shock.
Yeah, good point.
Right?
Good point.
But that's your natural reaction to something you don't understand. It doesn't necessarily mean that these objects are something that we have to fear.
Yeah.
Perhaps they are, perhaps they're not. But we shouldn't let our fear keep us from seeing what's really there.
Yeah, I think if there was something we really had to fear, we would know beyond any doubt by now, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, what are they waiting for?
What are they waiting
type
for?
Of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. These guys are funny.
I know, they're very good.
I mean, do they take people for idiots? People look in the night sky all the time. I know what a star and planet looks like, and
Exactly.
I bet the guy who was out fishing knows darned well, too.
But what's funny is further evidence shows this. These
UFOs
totally not
tracked
UFOs
on radar.
per the Air Force, totally Jupiter or a star per the Air Force, are tracked on radar. They were tracked at altitudes of 6,000 to 9,000 feet.
Not millions and millions of miles away, as in Jupiter.
Or any star, right? So something was 6,000 to 9,000 feet in the air. As you can see, I don't want to dive deeper into Oklahoma, which was made international news, but it blew me away that the catalyst for this wave was indeed a USO, and one that scared a hardy local fisherman almost literally to death. So in this case, we're able to read about the Air Force's involvement. And when you look at the Air Force's Project Blue Book files, you see at least 623 cases of USOs reported by the U.S. Navy. So within Project Blue Book, these 623 cases, I've pulled some selects where Blue Book coordinated with the U.S. Navy in order to investigate the sightings. And I'd like to just bring up a few examples here. August 1950, naval officers aboard a ship see an unidentified elliptical object approach the ship. The speed of the object was estimated to be around 500 miles an hour. The object was described as ovular, egg-shaped, tic-tac shaped. The object's color was described as shiny aluminum color, sparkled in the sunlight, and also as metallic white. The official Project Blue Book conclusion of this, unidentified. August 1954, off the coast of the Yaranjima Island in the Pacific Ocean, witnesses aboard the SS Dr. Angier witness a 100-foot diameter disc approach the ship from the northeast. It was estimated to be 100 feet accurately because it literally flew over the ship, stopped, and then rose and disappeared into the sky. The witnesses were interviewed by U.S. Air Force Intelligence, Project Blue Book, and the final conclusion, unidentified. So you've got the U.S. Navy seeing these crazy things, coordinating with Project Blue Book, the government's official UFO program, to investigate what they saw, because they don't know. If they know, it wouldn't have been a report. And it turns out official guidelines, Navy guidelines, were issued. So basically, here it is. Here's the whole procedure of if you see this, report it this way.
And I love this because it's got at the top, of course, picture of missiles, picture of a ship, picture of a submarine, then picture of a UFO with some military aircraft, as if,
Very nice.
That's every bit as real as the other things here.
See, that's why it bugs me when you keep saying that they're not admitting it. Well, they've got it in their documentation. I mean, they admit it, but in an offhanded, obfuscated way. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's trying to worm its way into our consensus reality, and the powers that be are resisting it. And they have been for, what, seems like 100 years. Well, more than 100 years. We're talking Christopher Columbus.
Well, yeah.
We're talking ancient China, right?
Yeah.
So, when are we finally going to just all go, okay, there's things that we can't identify. There's things we don't understand in this world.
Yeah.
We can't admit it because we're too addicted to feeling safe because we know everything.
And sometimes things leak through and the government kind of sort of admits that UFOs exist.
And then do people want to admit it? Or is that stigma still strong enough?
Well, we admit it and then we giggle about it and tease about it because we're not sure, we don't understand.
Yep.
Yep.
They drew a flying saucer, and they're telling pilots and Navymen, if you see this, here's how you report it. How to send it, and then to send that communication of that report, of that sighting, to a specific destination. One has to wonder, if you were someone at one of those destinations, receiving these reports, What kind of reports were you getting? What was that like? We spoke to someone who used to be in the Navy who worked at one of these destinations.
Oh, good,
Received a message. Let's cut to that Skype. When did you join the Navy, and how long were you in the Navy?
I joined back in February of 1968. I was in there for 4 years. Served in Vietnam in combat action, had a high-level, top-secret crypto level 14 security clearance.
He looks crazy in that
Mostly
picture.
worked at the Naval Communications Station in San Francisco, which was the busiest military hub back then in 1969.
So all communication from all naval ships is kind of coming into where you are.
Yes, on the Pacific side, yeah. On the Atlantic, there's other, but it was much more traffic on the Pacific side. There was a code room when atmospheric conditions are really bad. The only thing that can make it through is primitive communication. It's much slower, Morse code, doot, 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 type of thing. I was a certified high-speed code operator, 25 words per minute. I was monitoring 9 ship-to-shore circuits simultaneously for traffic from the ships, and I took thousands of messages during the years that I worked there. And the one message that came in always left imprint on the back of my memory.
Which was what?
A ship that was reporting its position off the coast of Alaska said that the crew visually witnessed coming off of port bow a brightly glowing reddish-orange elliptical unidentified object about 70 feet in diameter that merged out of the ocean, shot straight up into space. The ship's radar operator tracked the blips going over 7,000 miles per hour. This was secret classification, priority level, going to the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, D.C.
What kind of call was it? Was it a distress call? Was it just a, hey, this happened call? What kind of communication was coming from this vessel?
It was a classified secret message that was coming in, through Morse code. I was typing it out on the typewriter. As I'm typing this message out and decoding it in my mind, I'm reading this thing. I can't believe what I'm reading. Yes, I'm decoding it. I almost thought for a second, I could go over to the Xerox machine and make a copy, but then, you get 10 years in prison. That doesn't work. So, hand it on to the communications watch officer, which then took it to the crypto and then sent it on to Washington.
Okay, so after this 1969 experience that you had, did you have any other run-ins, experiences? Did you hear tales of other cases after that?
I've done a lot of research since that time. I find out that's not unusual. There's actually thousands of USO reports that coming out of the ocean that date way back.
And that brings us to the big one. Probably the most famous USO case ever. Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia.
Let's pause it here.
Why don't you...
Okay, so this guy is receiving what? More than thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of communications over the 4 years that he was doing it. And only one came through about USOs?
Yeah, sounds that way.
Well, that doesn't necessarily make sense, does it?
Well, maybe if a lot of them went unreported. But when you have a lot of people seeing something as dramatic as that, a 75-foot in diameter disc coming out of the water and going straight up into space, and you're able to track it on the radar, and it's going 7,000 miles an hour.
I know.
I guess I better report that one, yeah.
Well, and this next one, I think, is,
The one he says it's the big one.
Yeah, so let's pause, and then we can get back to it.
Okay.
Give me the basics.
Sure. October 4th, 1967, multiple witnesses see essentially an unidentified submerged object. Something comes down, enters the water. Subsequently, some people say they see it floating on the surface. The military is involved. Many witnesses.
Right. And leading up to this story, before this object that people see collide with the harbor off Nova Scotia, there are a few sightings leading up to that. One is an airline pilot who captured the object on radar. They said it was rectangular shaped with a string of lights. You've got a family at the same time sitting on their front porch. This is around 7 or 8 at night. They look up, they see the same exact object as this airline pilot. You've also got down in the water, you've got a boat captain picking up the object on his radar. He saw 4 objects on his radar, 4 different objects. So while some folks saw one solid object, a rectangle, others were picking up perhaps different objects. So this sucker is seen, 4 lights, descending at speed towards the harbor, collides with the harbor. People say they hear it sound like a bomb going off.
Yes, a sort of whistling, whooshing noise as this object or objects descends.
At this point, many people were calling their local radio stations to report, I just saw this. The first person to call to see this with his own eyes and to call authorities, that first phone call was by Laurie Wickens, who we spoke to via Skype. Let's listen to his story. You were a witness at the Shag Harbor event.
Yes, I was the first one to call the RCMP that night. There was 5 of us in the car. We see lights in the sky. We just thought it was an airplane.
And describe for me what you saw.
There was 4 lights. They were in a row, in a line, all level. And after we went a mile or so, as we made a corner and started going up a hill, the light went from going level to a 45-degree angle. And before we made the top of the hill, the light went out of sight for about 3 seconds. We made the top of the hill, there was 1 light in the water. We just thought it was a plane that went down. We went to a phone booth and called the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and reported a plane crash.
One theory is that this is a crash, but I wonder, when you come to think that there was a recovery operation, they searched, expecting to find debris. I mean, people thought initially, one of the theories was this is a plane crash. They didn't find anything, and that's interesting. It raises the possibility that this was a controlled descent into the water. And indeed, if some of the witnesses saw it floating on the surface, did it actually take off and leave?
What do you think it was?
Don't know. They said something crashed. They said we officially searched for something, but we don't know what it is.
And the official story says we found nothing. Nothing was found.
Oh.
And to me, that's almost as crazy as we found a UFO, because if an object is observed in the air, tracked on radar, its size estimated, it's seen crashing into a harbor, and if gravity works the way it's supposed to work, you would find something in that lake.
Or at least some damage if it hit the harbor.
You would think
it
there
sounded
would be
like a
something
bomb.
down there. Or, if this really was a crash, as the witnesses believe, debris.
We have no proof that the official story, we found nothing, is false beyond logic. And I think logic says if a massive screaming object falls from the sky and hits a lake, you're gonna find something. You're, like you said, debris. I mean, I'm fine with accepting that it's a balloon or XYZ, but to say nothing was found after, quote, it sounded like a bomb going off when it hit, is just preposterous, in my opinion.
Yep.
Is that something that the military has a history of doing, though?
Well, I think you can look back at the entire history of military involvement in this and say, at the very least, they've downplayed it. I mean, if this was something conventional, the police report would simply have said, pilots saw something, there was an apparent crash, we searched, and sure enough, sadly, a light aircraft has crashed, and we've recovered it. And that's all the report would say. And of course, we see from time to time, that's exactly the sort of report you do read in government files. But this, it's something else.
Now, if you remember, as we started talking about Shag Harbor, we talked about the sightings in the radar data before the crash. One of those was a boat captain who, captured the objects on his radar. Here is an official report with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police about, as you see here, the unidentified flying object on 4 October 1967, in which that boat captain is interviewed. He acknowledges within this document, at times the Navy do a lot of practicing in the area. He acknowledges, look, I know the military and the Navy, they've done tests, there's testing grounds nearby, I know stuff happens out here, but he says, quote, I had never seen anything like this before. When an object left the water, it went straight up in the air with only one red light. And so he sees this sucker go in the water, remain in the water, move through the water, and then take off out of the water. Could have been this, could have been this, but I literally had never seen anything like this before. And, you know, many of us haven't. I mean, to see something crash into the ocean, move around, and then take off again is preposterous.
It's difficult to reconcile that with something that we had at the time. I mean, you know, these people are pretty good witnesses.
Difficult?
What I like
Impossible.
about this is he's
At the time, even now.
Good point.
Seriously.
Yep. Yep.
So, boy, they're spending some time on this one. I guess because many witnesses, because the craft is doing something weird or impossible tech-wise.
And then nothing at all was found.
Yeah, nothing at all was found, which we have seen before, at least recently. They recently came out with another Tic Tac video where the object goes into the water, and the Navy races over there and didn't find anything in the water.
And how recent was that?
I don't know when the video was made, but it was released within the last month, I want to say.
Okay, so it's a
fairly
recent
new.
sighting.
Yeah, well, it might have happened back in 2004, like the Nimitz encounter.
Oh, so they're not admitting to seeing anything right now.
Nothing
Or
recent, no. Good point.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if anything comes out today or in the next few weeks. You know, it looks like
Today's pretty quiet.
they've kind of squashed it. You know,
yeah, it's surprising.
And tell me if you agree with this. In watching all of these videos, which are so well done, I'm developing, I'm developing the opinion that they come in batches. So you have a whole bunch around 1969 to 1975, right? And then you have a space, and then, 10 years later, you got another bunch that happen all at the same time. And so maybe we're just in a lull right now. Mm-hmm. So have you noticed a pattern like that?
I can see where you could deduce that, but we're just seeing a handful of examples they've handpicked. So I don't know how accurate it is, but I can see where you get that from.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to research when was the last actual documented unidentified object sighting.
Well, and see, that's just the thing. A lot of them go unreported. So there's this
the
other
last
guy.
reported
There's
one.
this other guy I follow on YouTube. He's called the Earth Watchman, and that he just watches the
love it.
Earth. Yeah, he's awesome. He looks at all these seismographic charts. He's monitoring the Yellowstone supervolcano. He monitors sunspots and flares, and he monitors storms on and all this stuff. And people send him pictures of weird cloud formations and weird lights in the sky. And just the other day, people now have these cameras which they mount for security on trees, on porches, or eaves of their roofs or whatever. And someone sent him a video where these lights came over their house, caught on one of these cameras that's just running all the time for security.
Wow.
Really bizarre looking set of lights, and it's like kind of had a triangular type of shape to it. It's like
So this is recent.
Yeah, this is recent. So it's like they're happening. A lot of them go unreported.
Yep, and that's our culture right now, which we're
Seems to
hoping
be.
to slowly walk out of
Chip
the dark
away at it.
ages.
Yeah.
This is like, someday I think we're going to look back on this time period as the second stage of dark age. It's like
Or the birthing of a new age of enlightenment.
A new renaissance is coming here very soon. I
Yes,
do believe
there
that
you
it's
go.
already started.
There you go.
And starting with, part of it is these discussions about admitting the fact that humans do not know everything.
Discussions, I love that. Podcasts are super popular right now, and what are they? They're just discussions. Traditional media is falling off a cliff because why? Because people have woken up to the fact that they're biased and they're slanted and they're telling you things that they want you to believe to promote their people that buy advertising on their station and the corporations.
Well, yeah,
and,
to promote
and
their
whatnot.
continued control.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think we're slowly kind of determining, okay, what's true, what's false, what's, like these mind tools that you shared with us a while back, guarding against fake news. They're developing, their critical thinking is developing.
Yes, and I think
they're turning off the corporate traditional media.
Well, I think it's a very ingrained process for, is it Gen Z, right? Our daughter is Gen Z.
Sure.
And we're Gen X. So like their generation, her generation, she's 16, almost 17. Research is what they do. Whenever they want to know something, they go on the internet and they research it, and they have learned those critical thinking skills, and they are the ones that are going to change the world because of that. That's what I believe.
Cool. I hope you're right.
Yeah. So the Renaissance is coming.
It's coming.
And even if today turns out to be a kind of a
dud,
yeah, it's okay because we had a great podcast. So let's see what these guys have to say.
Yeah, let's wrap up this episode 8 of the Basement Office and see if we can wrap up this podcast. Here we go.
Very careful not to be, I suppose, over-embellishing this.
Yeah.
He says, like, when he doesn't know, he says, I don't know, or I couldn't see it.
Right.
So you are getting a real straight shooter here, just telling it like it is. And yeah, absolutely. When you think, well, could it be this? Could it be that? No. He sees that kind of stuff.
And on top of that, at the bottom of this report by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, it says, Captain Mercy is considered to be a reliable type individual and bears a good reputation in his community. The officials, the police, military found this man to be legit. So most of my brain leans towards Occam's razor. This is all just simply experimental aircraft created by humans that still to this day is being withheld from public view. But it's hard to process at the same time the data, the evidence, the witness accounts by law enforcement, military, all describing something seemingly impossible.
And as we covered in the last episode, now astrophysicists and US Navy personnel saying perhaps even something not human.
And there we have it. Yep, not human.
Boy, sure leaning in that direction. I mean,
Well, and think about how much we could learn. They obviously are controlling elements that we haven't even discovered yet.
Yeah.
Our periodic table says that these things can't exist, and yet they do.
They do. They're just not stable. Or if they do and they're stable, we don't know what to do with them. We don't know how to stack those atoms. We don't know how to make that element be an anti-gravity type of element. I mean,
Well, yeah, and so we can slowly start to open up our reality, and maybe we'll learn something.
yeah, so put yourself in an alien's shoes. Let's, they're here, they've got these ships.
It's hard to
zipping
do this in
around.
case you haven't noticed I am human.
What
but-
are they doing?
All right, I'm pretending to be an alien.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
observing us. Okay, so...
Okay, so there's more than one type of alien. So which
Or maybe-
type do you want me to be?
Or maybe they're not even here to observe us. Maybe they're just here for water purposes, or they're studying water. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so I'm an alien, and first of all, you have to get a permit. All right, because this Earth thing is like a protected sanctuary. Okay, the Earth is a very unique thing in the universe, and so you have to get a permit if you want to visit.
Okay, and so what does it
So
say in that
it's-
permit? You're not allowed to contact or,
No,
or
well,
be observed by these peons, these people, these things.
Well,
this other race on this weird, beautiful planet.
Yeah, so I'm
That
imagining
you're getting a permit for.
that it's similar to our process, which I'm sure it's not. So I can't really take my human mind out of this. But
well, that's true.
So you're so right now I'll be the ones that are called grays, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the grays are not necessarily capable of being empathic with humans. Okay. So that makes them, in the area more of hostile versus here to help. Not necessarily that they're hostile, but they're observing us, and they're so different from us that they can't see the similarities. And so it's more of a fear response. Okay? If I were a different kind of alien that is capable of understanding humans, is capable of connecting to what it is to be human. And do you understand what I mean when I say capable of expressing empathy? That's the difference between the aliens.
Yeah, I'm getting.
There's many different
I'm trying
types.
to put myself in an alien shoes. So I'm sitting here. I've got the ship. I'm zipping around. I'm like, look at that funny little military plane they've got. That's so cute. Let me zip over here to their next contact point. In a fraction of the time it'll take them to get here. Oh, wow, look, there's another ship here waiting for them. I wonder if they got me on radar. Here, let me jam them for a little bit and really freak them out. Are they just playing with us? Or, because that Commander Fravor said that Tic Tac was aware of him. It was mimicking his moves.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, they're studying us.
I would be so tempted. Yeah, I'd be so tempted if I was an alien to share my knowledge with them and help them.
Well, that's because you are capable of empathy. You're a human. You know what it's like to be human, and you're assuming that the aliens are capable of that. And some of them are, and not all of them. So, like, for example, the Greys are learning from us, but they're not an empathic race yet, right? And humans are an empathic race. However, we're kind of stuck in this consensus reality that's got us asleep, right? And so you do have a lot of species of aliens that are coming here to help. And
are they helping telepathically? Are they waiting for the right time to help?
I think they're doing things that we cannot understand as humans to ensure that the Earth will survive. I think their main concern is for the habitat of Earth to survive.
I hope you're right.
The ones that are, here to help.
Cool.
If we could just open up our reality and allow them to exist, I think we could have some fun.
And on that note, I hope you guys have a great Friday. And we're anxiously awaiting to see if anything does come out about the big UFO reveal. And so far as I know, nothing yet. So if we have something revealed, we'll try and come back on and discuss it here on the podcast. But if not sooner, then a little bit later, we'll continue our journey down this basement office UFO path. The next episode is number 9, World War II UFOs, which I find quite fascinating and can't wait to introduce JoJo to. So until next week.
Looking forward to it. JoJo out.